They thought they burned a town, but they only lit a fire that will never die. Before we begin this heartbreaking story, if you believe in justice, in truth, and in the power of change, then subscribe right now to Wealth and Wounds. Because some stories don't just deserve to be heard, they demand to be remembered. Haven Brook wasn't the kind of town that made headlines. It was small, hidden behind dusty pine trees and railroad tracks that hadn't been used in 20 years. The people there work hard: farmers, teachers, mechanics, mothers, and dreamers. At the heart of Haven Brook was Evelyn Carter, a widowed teacher in her 40s with a deep, calming voice and a mind sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She was the kind of woman who believed in children before they believed in themselves. But Haven Brook had a secret, one that the locals whispered about when the wind got too still. The police department, Haven Brook County Sheriff's Office, had power that reached far beyond the law. It wasn't about justice. It was about control. At the head of it stood Sheriff Thomas Kane, a man with silver hair, piercing blue eyes, and a voice that could freeze your blood. He was respected, feared, untouchable. No one crossed him, not even the mayor. One evening, as Evelyn locked up her classroom, she noticed her student Malik, a quiet 14-year-old boy, sitting alone under a tree near the schoolyard. His face was swollen, his eyes red. "Malik," she asked softly, "what happened to you?" He looked away. "They said I matched a description." "Who did?" "The cops." And just like that, the fragile calm of Haven Brook cracked. That weekend, the Sheriff's Department announced they were launching Operation Clean Sweep, a campaign to restore order in the community. To outsiders, it sounded noble. To Haven Brook's black residents, it sounded like a warning. That night, sirens screamed down the old dirt road. Homes were raided. Men were pulled from beds. Women were pushed aside. Evelyn watched from her porch as lights flashed across the faces of her neighbors, faces filled with terror and disbelief. The next morning, half the families on the east side of Haven Brook were gone. No one knew where. The sheriff called it temporary detainment. But the school buses that once carried laughing children now drove half empty. And Evelyn knew something terrible was happening. She began keeping a notebook: names, dates, the missing. Malik's name was the first on the list. If this story has you holding your breath, take 1 second. Hit that subscribe button. Because stories like this are too real, too painful, and too important to stay buried. 3 weeks later, a journalist named Daniel Reyes arrived from Atlanta. He was young, ambitious, and fearless, the kind of reporter who didn't care about awards, only truth. He had heard whispers of the missing families from an anonymous email that read, "They took them in the night. Please help us before they erase us all." Daniel met Evelyn in her empty classroom. The chalkboard still had lessons half erased, a ghost of normal life. "I need proof," Daniel said quietly. "I have names," Evelyn replied. "And I have fear. Lots of it." They began to investigate. Old police records, detainment logs, property seizures. And what they found was a pattern. Families were being removed from their homes, their land reclassified as abandoned, and later sold to private developers connected to, you guessed it, Sheriff Kane's brother-in-law. Haven Brook wasn't being protected. It was being erased. It started with smoke. Evelyn smelled it first, a thick, bitter scent crawling through her open window. By the time she reached the porch, the east side of Haven Brook was burning. The same streets she had walked every morning were engulfed in flames. Daniel rushed toward the chaos with his camera. He caught glimpses of black uniforms moving through the smoke, officers breaking windows, pushing people back, shouting for evacuation. But evacuation to where? When the fire died down, Haven Brook looked like a ghost town. The few families that remained were told to leave for safety. The next day, official statements claimed it was a gas explosion. But Evelyn and Daniel knew better. They had the footage. They had the proof. But proof meant nothing if no one was alive to tell the story. 2 nights later, Evelyn's house was raided. Daniel's notes were gone. His camera smashed. Evelyn was taken into custody for questioning. But when the state authorities came looking for her a week later, there was no record of her arrest. No booking file. No mugshot. Nothing. Just a single line in the sheriff's ledger. Subject transferred. Transferred where? No one ever found out. Daniel disappeared soon after. And the town, the entire east side of Haven Brook, was bulldozed within months. In its place rose a glittering new development, Havenbrook Hills Luxury Estates. The brochures called it a fresh start for the future. But the past lay buried beneath every polished stone. 5 years later, a black car pulled up to the new town hall. A woman stepped out, dressed in a tailored grey suit, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. Her hair was streaked with silver now, but her voice carried that same quiet fire. It was Evelyn Carter, alive. She had spent years gathering evidence, working with civil rights lawyers, uncovering records hidden in the state archives, and tracing bank transactions that led straight to Kane's private accounts. When she walked into the courtroom that morning, the whispers began. Sheriff Kane was already seated at the defense table, his once commanding posture deflated. Evelyn's testimony shook the foundation of Havenbrook's legacy. And just when the judge was about to adjourn the hearing for the day, Evelyn stood and said, "Your Honor, there's one more thing you should see." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small, charred notebook, the same one she had kept the names in. These were the people who vanished, and I will make sure the world never forgets them again. The room went silent. Sheriff Kane's face turned pale. And then the power went out. Darkness swallowed the courtroom. When the lights flickered back on, Evelyn was gone. Her chair stood empty. Only the notebook remained. If Evelyn's courage moved you, if you believe her story must live on, then don't just scroll away. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wealth and Wounds. Because the world may forget their names, but we won't.